Welcome to Black and Gold Digital Edition, a behind-the-scenes look at your Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hi, and welcome to our season premiere of our digital show. I'm Jay Pushkar alongside Kent Urbanski and Mike Fenner. And guys, it's hard to believe the 2022 regular season is upon us. But before we get to any of that, all of us had a chance to experience what we haven't seen in some time now. The team going back to Latrobe and going back to St. Vincent College for training camp. Kent, you and I were there for the guys coming in with all their luggage and everything. What was the overall experience like for you, being able to return and see all those guys in person?
I love it. I love going down there. It's such a serene atmosphere down there, and it feels like you're at camp. You know, the last couple of years with COVID, it's been at the stadium. It just felt like you were at practice. You know, here it kind of felt like camp. Seeing the fans back, you know, the sights, the sounds, the smells, you know what I mean, of being at training camp. I love it. I love going there, and I think, you know, the players kind of, you know, some of those guys, they were there for the first time, experiencing that for the first time too. So it was interesting to hear their comments and their takes on it.
And Mike, you were down there a handful of times. I mean, other than the true training camp feel of the sultry weather too, I mean, it was quite the experience for a lot of the fans.
TJ Watt said it perfectly. Nobody's bigger or better than Latrobe. Nobody's bigger or better than that experience. And it's something, like you said, for those guys, first time experiencing that. Also, first time for guys experiencing the up-close and personal media attention again after not having that for a couple of years with COVID-19 protocols, kind of back to a normal feel there at training camp. And yeah, the energy was amped up, and those people, they were looking so much forward to being there. People that are in town there in Latrobe and people from the surrounding areas in central, eastern, western Pennsylvania, all over the state and beyond, to be able to come and see that. I know, you know, we talk to people that are from out of state that looked forward to being there. And
this is like their vacation.
Yeah.
I mean, they really planned around to do this.
I know a lot of people that were looking forward to it. So it was a great experience for those guys to get that, and for the fans to be able to get, you know, kind of back to that experience again.
And Kent, the overall setup on campus too, very fan friendly, and they really catered to the fans. They really wanted them back, and it really showed over those weeks down at Latrobe.
Right, and you could see because it was packed every day. You know, I was never there when it wasn't packed. So, and there were people there every day, and even like more than we were. Because every time, you know, I'm like, hey, I saw you here last time. And then, don't you have a job?
Right.
So, but yeah, that just goes to show you how much the fan base loves that team, and we'll do anything to be in that intimate atmosphere with them.
One of the big headlines going into camp was the battle at quarterback. You got three guys in the mix. Mitch Trubisky is going to get the start in week one, but you had Mason Rudolph coming back as one of those veteran quarterbacks, and then you have Kenny Pickett, who is a fan favorite. And turning our attention now to the preseason action, Kent, you and I were at both home games, and boy, he is a fan favorite, Kenny Pickett is.
Yeah.
When he made his debut in the first preseason game in that third quarter, the chants were loud, and boy, did he deliver.
Right, you know, local kid from Pitt, you know, and I was sort of shocked at that reception for him, though, because, you know, when he was drafted, there were mixed, you know, emotions all over the board, but as soon as he walked on that field, that whole stadium lit up, and that was exciting to see, and the stage wasn't too big for Kenny. You know, he came in, he was comfortable, and he, you know, he played very well in all of those games. That would have had to be a very difficult decision for that coaching staff to make, you know, as far as who was going to be the starter.
And Mike, you've been down to a slew of the practices. What kind of vibe have you been getting? Because it seems like all three quarterbacks, they've been very professional about this, and they're just going about their business. And better yet, it's all about the betterment of the team.
You're exactly right. That's the number one point. And everyone we talk to around the quarterbacks, they seem to agree that these guys are all preparing the same way as if they are going to start or if they're going to be ready to start. We talked this week to Trubisky, who said, yeah, I expected to be named the starter. He's also a captain, one of the offensive captains for this team. He expected to be the guy and get a chance, but he knows how much this means after not having that starting position in Buffalo, being a backup. He was a guy that last started with the Bears, won a couple of playoff games. I mean, he's a proven guy, but everyone knows that he's preparing just as much as Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph are preparing to be ready on game day, because you just never know. I mean, I know they said they're going to address two quarterbacks week one, but in any case, throughout this season, they've got a guy in Mason Rudolph that knows the system, and for now is still a part of this team. You got a guy in Pickett who has all the potential, all the tools, and you got a guy in Trubisky who has the experience. So it's an interesting mix of guys. what a way to replace a legend in Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, this is going to be really interesting to see how this pans out all season long. I think it's going to be a very ongoing process with this quarterback battle.
Yeah, look, I think Kenny's the future of this team. No doubt about it. But I like the Mitch Trubisky start. And I mean, he's got experience. He's got NFL experience, and I think he's right from the get-go is your guy.
He's the right guy for this situation,
absolutely,
right?
You know, and let Kenny sit and learn a little bit, or not sit, but stand on the sidelines and soak it all up, you know. And there's no need to throw him right out there. And it's going to be a hostile environment up there in Cincinnati. It's going to be loud. Not that he's not used to that sort of thing. He's played a lot of football. But I think Mitch is the right guy to start the season. And I'm excited to see him because we haven't seen any of them for a full 4 quarters yet. You know,
we've seen him for about 2 at most.
Yeah, so I'm anxious to get up there to Cincinnati and see what Mitch can do and how, if he can lead this team.
Anything surprise you coming out of the preseason going into week 1?
Surprised that they didn't do more to solidify the offensive line. You know, that may still happen, but you know, they have all the skill set weapons that they need, and I think Mitch is the type of guy who has some ability that he can move that team, but whether he's going to get the protection to be able to do it is my biggest concern. So we didn't see great things from that offensive line in the preseason. I'm hoping they figure some things out and they show up a little bit better in this opening game in Cincinnati.
Anything stand out for you, just going to the practices and just everything that we've been seeing over the last month or so?
I think one of the most important things maybe being under-discussed right now is the running back room, because Najee Harris offering up that Liz Frank injury. Not on the injury report right now, and it looks like he's going to be ready to go for week 1, but how much of a workload can he handle with that injury? Something that he said to us he sustained in training camp. It's about a 4 to 6 week timeline of an injury, and from when he suffered that injury, he might not be 100%, even though he's out there. It's like, how many snaps can he give you? And he's a very important piece of this offense, of course. He's a guy you want to be that bell cow back, but they really need to find who that number 2 running back is, and I think they've struggled to do that in this preseason. So it's going to be interesting to see who gets those reps, because a guy like Benny Snell has really fallen off. A guy like Jalen Warren has emerged as a guy that could really contribute as a backup running back or a spell back, but they're going to need more hands on deck from those guys, because Najee might be ready to go, but do you really want to be comfortable giving him 25 to 30 touches on the ground after that kind of unique injury and something that could be a lingering type of deal? Hopefully not, but something that could keep him a little bit slowed out of the gate.
Yeah, I see that as well.
And Warren's one of those feel-good stories. I mean, he started playing football in JUCO college, and then he made his way up through the different ranks of the collegiate level, came in undrafted, and now here he is, number 2 on the depth chart coming out of the backfield. So he's a guy that I'm going to quietly be rooting for because of just the hard work it took for him. Yeah. And then, of course, we got the reaction of when he found out that he made the 53-man. He couldn't believe it. I mean, he didn't want anybody to jinx the fact that, hey, there's a 4 o'clock deadline. It's only 3:55. I don't want to hear anything until otherwise. Yeah. So he's definitely a guy. He's small in stature, but boy, he really brings it when they need him the most. So he's a guy to kind of keep an eye out.
Can you say jet sweep? I mean, if not, if Najee not up to, you know,
he's kind of like a Darren Sproles type too, where he's got that
speed. You're going to see a lot of Olszewski and a lot of those types of scat guys that are doing a lot of jet sweeps.
Get creative and use some of those receivers in different ways, for sure.
Well, guys, just turning the attention now to week 1 with Cincinnati. I mean, they're opening up on the road. They're opening up against the defending AFC champions and the division champions as well. I mean, it was a magical season from the very end for the Bengals. How does Pittsburgh handle all the excitement, the pageantry of opening up a regular season, and just knowing you got a lot of new faces on that roster?
Get off to a fast start. Score first. You know, whether that's offense, defense, or special teams. You know, take the crowd out of it. You know, that's the first thing you have to do. And whether
and we saw it last year. I mean, Pittsburgh came out pretty well, and then all of a sudden Cincinnati just punched them in the mouth.
And for here, I totally expect Cincinnati to stack that box, try to do everything that they can to disrupt, you know, take advantage of that offensive line. Stop Najee. I think that's going to be their game plan right off the bat, to stop Najee and make Mitch make plays, and you know, with this with the new system here. So I do think, however, that this Steelers defense is really going to be something special, and I think they can be disruptive, and I think that they can create a turnover or two that can help keep them in this game.
And Mike, last year, again, different roster and everything, but last year they went up to Buffalo, and Buffalo was a preseason type of team that, hey, they're going to go to the Super Bowl, if not one of the favorites. And they went up there and they shocked them. It was gritty. It wasn't pretty, but they got it done. Could they possibly do it this week?
I think you look back at that game, and that's one of the handful of results across the league last year from the whole totality of the season, and people are like, how did that happen?
It was
But
a head scratcher.
But that's week one. And still, Pittsburgh was a playoff team, so it's not like they were, not a quality team. I mean, but yeah, it's a similar expectation. A lot of people across the league, the national pundits are saying this is an easy pick, Cincinnati. But yeah, you've got nothing to lose if that's how they're going to treat it. I mean, they don't care about who's picking who. I mean, Pittsburgh's going to go out there and play their game. But back to those slow starts. This is a totally different team, and you've got a guy in Trubisky that's totally new to the print here instead of Ben Roethlisberger. But those slow starts last year, aside from maybe that Cincy game, I mean, these were some painful drive charts to look at.
I mean, Chris Boswell was your MVP because they couldn't finish drives, or they were already behind the 8 ball and in the deficit.
So they need to stay ahead of the chains. They cannot let negative yardage plays affect them early in the game. They can't give up sacks. They got to stay ahead of the sticks. If they can stay on schedule and get a couple early scores, no matter how they can get them, that's going to be critical because they cannot fall behind the way they were doing it last year.
And you can't let Joe Mixon run all over the place and then open things up in the passing game because of it. So I think that's key in itself right there. And if they've got some weapons there on those wide receivers, those three.
Might be the best trio of receivers.
Right. So, but
Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd.
If Burrow doesn't have the time to get it to them, then then
they've improved their line though. We'll see.
Yeah,
I don't know. They put a lot of money into that offensive line this offseason.
Finally, guys, just the overall outlook. I mean, a lot of people, they like the AFC West and all 4 teams just being able to battle it out. A lot of people are also saying about the AFC North, even though people have Pittsburgh at the middle to the bottom of the standings for their predictions. I feel like it's going to be survival of the fittest when it's all said and done because no one really stands out for me. What's the overall outlook with this group going into the 2020?
Injuries is the biggest thing. I mean, look what happened to Baltimore last year. That was probably the most talented team in the division, and then they just couldn't overcome the injuries. So I think if the Steelers can, find, their footing on offense and make some splash plays and because you can't keep the defense on the field all game long, then I think they're going to be right around, an 8-8, 9-win team this year. I'm not looking. There's some really tough teams on that schedule, including this one coming up. But I see some stumbling blocks here at the beginning of the season, and if they can figure things out, I think they have enough weapons on offense and they have a good defense, and they can hang in there.
Don't forget, this was not a runaway win for the Bengals in the AFC North. It was right down to the last couple of weeks there. I mean, Pittsburgh could have easily won that division last year. So I think it'll be an exciting race once again in the AFC North. We'll see.
Well, keep in mind, Mike Tomlin never had a losing season, so he's got that going for himself as well. So optimism all around in the Steel City going into the 2022 regular season. Well, that wraps it up for our digital show. For Ken Urbanski and Mike Fenner, I'm Jay Pushkar. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for watching. Join us again next week for Black and Gold Digital Edition.